Welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. My mission is to expand the conversation of love in the world. Is it possible to have deep, loving, healthy relationships? Have you ever been curious about having more than one relationship or partner at a time? Get ready to transform in love, be courageous, and set yourself free. In this show, we talk about relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. The Elizabeth Cunningham Show starts now. All right, welcome to welcome to Elizabeth speaking English. All right, welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding in Love. And today we are talking about embodiment and Eros. And before I introduce our fantastic guest for today, just a reminder that the Elizabeth Cunningham Show is live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on the Transformation Network Facebook page, and is then aired on YouTube and podcast every single Thursday. You can just Google the Elizabeth Cunningham Show and it will pop up in your Google search, or you can just look at the links for the show in the show notes and it'll take you right there. All right, beautiful. So on today's episode, we'll be talking to Nadia Munla about embodiment and Eros. Nadia is an embodiment and intimacy coach who helps visionaries play at their erotic edge in both their love life and leadership. She is the creator of Embody by Nadia, an embodiment method that has helped thousands of women reconnect to their pleasure, power, and play in Erotic Mapping, a sensual journey of erotic archetypal discovery. Hi, Nadia. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to talk about this topic today, especially because I love eroticism and I love leadership, and you have put both of them together. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is my whole heart. I love it so much. But I wanted to start off by just asking, laying the groundwork, as people who follow my show know that I do this. So what do you mean when you say embodiment? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's always such a great place to start, right? Both words, embodiment and Eros, I feel like are there can be a lot of projection, a lot of assumption about what those words mean. And with embodiment, my take on it is really about living through the body, meaning feeling your senses to the max. Every single experience that you're having in life, are you having it through the framework of the mind, or are you feeling it in your body? Are you sensing it in your body? And so obviously, if you're embodied, you're sensing it and feeling it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very vulnerable. Like, that's what comes up for me is I'm like, oh my God, do I want to feel everything in my body?
That is exactly what stops us from doing it. Because especially, I think when we are walking around in the world and we have a lot of feminine energy, right? There's just a tendency to feel everything. And so it can be a very overwhelming lifestyle. And I tell a lot of my clients in my community, it's not a convenient way of doing life. So let's be clear. I'm not selling you something that is like, oh, it's all going to be rainbows and sunshine. No, that shit's going to be hard. And it's also equally rewarding. Because the more we can feel one end of the spectrum that we don't want to feel, the more we have access to the other end of the spectrum that we do want to feel. And over time, we increase our capacity to actually be with all of it, both the piece that feels like, oh, I don't want to touch the grief, or I don't want to touch the disgust, or I don't want to touch the anger, all the way into the ecstatic and into the orgasmic and into the joyful and into the playful and into the rainbow and into all, it's like we actually start to like, I sometimes now get excited about feeling the grief. I get excited about feeling the disappointment and the sadness and the whatever else comes up, because I know, oh, okay, I'm stretching into what's possible on the other side as well.
I love that. And we'll get into that as our conversation goes on inside of like what's possible, right? I love that. But let's reel myself in here. What do you mean by Eros? Let's go back.
Okay. So Eros is life force, right? And the word erotic comes from the word Eros. And so I think a lot of people in pop culture, we think about the erotic and we automatically have a picture. Maybe each person has a different picture, but we have a very sort of sexual, particular image that's sold to us by the media or porn or whatever else. And the erotic is actually just life force. And so breathing is erotic. Feeling is erotic, right? Sensing yourself is erotic. And so actually embodiment is the pathway to more Eros into your body. And that's it. And like, who doesn't want more life force? Because to me, life force is the criteria for accessing our truest power. Like really feeling powerful, the more you have breath, the more you have aliveness and life force coursing through you, the more you are able to be with everything from physical challenges to mental challenges to emotional challenges to spiritual, like the entire gamut. You've got it when you have more life force. You can handle it.
Well, that is absolutely true. And I think that's important too, because again, like you're talking about such a huge area of expansiveness that it's like, it's scary, it's vulnerable. But as you said, when you expand into that so much more becomes possible. And I love that you use the word life force. Right? Life force, breathing into something, expanding into something. So do you find that people can easily connect with these concepts? No.
So they're both, it can be challenging, right? Like as a business person to be working with words that have a lot of projection, that have a lot of confusion, that are just like, and like I said, assumptions around them. And it still doesn't mean that the concepts themselves aren't the most profound and powerful. So I think that, most people are not so much aware of the power of embodiment and the erotic because we live in a world that has us all about being in the mental space, productivity, go from A to B, right? Like we've been hustling for a long time now in the modern world. And also shames a lot of the erotic. And specifically for women identifying folks, right? It's going to be extra because we have a whole nother layer where we were silenced in our feminine erotic, because actually there was so much power in being in that energy and it was taken away and stripped down and we were silenced, a lot by the patriarchal structures that came in over time in history. And so I think the combination of all those things makes it not an automatic path as a human, but it is our birthright. And it's actually when we strip away all the messaging, all the programming, all the societal mores, all the stuff, all the gunk, our primal animal bodies actually have access to that very easily and very organically. And that is the truest power that we can access. It's just that we have to take a whole bunch of shit off first.
Yeah. And I totally hear that. And I hear that is exactly why it is so difficult for people to connect with those things, is because, and I know that in the work that I do as well, sometimes it's hard to even see, or rather you don't even see those layers that are preventing you from that. So how can you connect with these concepts when you can't even connect with what's preventing you from connecting to the concept?
Yeah.
So
it's deep work.
It is really deep work. What do you see that people like when people do get connected to that? Like,
Well,
and
everything shifts.
everything shifts.
Everything shifts. There's no particular area. I mean, obviously the first one I see is like, their connection to themselves and their sexuality is automatically shifted, because when you connect deeper to your body and your feeling body, you are able to intuit what's a yes, what's a no, where do I want to go from here, what do I like, what do I don't like, what have I said yes to for a really long time that I actually hate, right? Like all these pieces. But then also like a lot of like dropping deeper and into your own body, into connection to self, is going to make it easier for you to connect with another person. When your heart is open, when your body is sensing, right? The other person is going to, on a primal level, their nervous system is going to trust you more when you're being open in your expression and true to what's actually happening on the inside, and you're showing that on the outside. So that's the quickest thing, but there's 100 other things that I could get into, but I'll leave it at that one, because I know people like to have good sex. So
Yeah.
we'll start there.
We'll try and get into as many as we can. I know that, we could talk about this for hours and hours and days. And this is something that you've dedicated your entire life to. So obviously we could just keep going and going and going. But we are going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I want to get into more of those, like what stops people, what prevents people, what are those layers that we just talked about. And maybe also what are some of the myths and misconceptions about it as well. So I'd love to get into that when we get back, and we'll be on a short break. All right, welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding in Love. And we are here with Nadia Munla, and we are talking about embodiment and Eros. And in this section, I wanted to talk about what are some of the myths and misconceptions that people have around embodiment and Eros?
Well, I mean, just the embodiment piece, I feel could take up an hour. So let's start there and see how much we get through.
All
So,
right.
I mean, I think when I first started working with women in my practice, as I was creating Embody, which is the method and the class that I teach, what I really started to notice was with all my clients across the board, there was these universal themes that were coming up. And no matter what was going on in their lives, it always came back to these three areas of pleasure, power, and play, which is how the class is sort of structured. And I started to realize that in the world, there are these three messages that we get over and over again. And one is the idea that our pleasure is dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of ways that that's affirmed, unfortunately, right? But that pleasure is dangerous, that erotic is dangerous, the idea that play is unproductive, and work is only serious, of course. And then the idea that emotionality is weak, and that power comes from the more like mental up here space, and not so much from the intuitive belly space. And to me, these are all myths to be debunked, because it's all bullshit, right? But we're fed that over and over again in so many different ways. And so much of the journey of getting embodied is essentially about saying, no, I refuse to believe this bullshit, right?
Hell
like
yeah.
I'm a no to this, right?
Yeah.
Because play can be incredibly inspirational and creative. Our emotionality can be one of our deepest superpowers. It's not the only one. I'm not telling you to let go of your head forever, because it's important to be strategic, on time, doing things, structure, right? Like that's important too. But it's about like we've been cut off from our emotional bodies in the modern world. And it's really important that we reclaim that piece, that actually our heart is one of our biggest superpowers, and our emotional body is that too. And to do that, what is the work? The work is increasing your capacity to be with what we talked about earlier, all the way from grief to ecstasy. because that's actually the path of the embodied woman, is to actually just stretch that capacity every single day a little bit more and go deeper and deeper into all of it, because that's her access to those sensations that everyone's yearning for. Everyone's always like, I want this, crazy cosmic, energetic, mind-blowing, like I can't even remember my name sex, right? It's like, okay,
Yes,
that's all great, but ultimately, are you doing the work to be okay with your own sensations? Because if you can't drop into your own body and be in a space of non-judgment around your own emotionality and around the expression of it, which is sound, tears, whatever stretch movement happens during sex, during movement, it's all the same thing, right? So how you show up moving your body or being with your body is going to be exactly the same how you show up when you're relating with another person, as you two, or three, or however many people you are moving your bodies, right? And so there's that piece. And then of course, the pleasure being dangerous is a really important one that we need to flip on its head and go, no, pleasure is also a superpower. The erotic is a superpower, like we talked about earlier. So to me, those are some key myths that I noticed that are fed to us, that we're essentially in this revolution going, no, we no longer do this. We no longer play by these rules. This is old. It's very 1998.
So 1998 of you. Yes.
Yeah.
I know it's so relatable, because I know for my own experience, personally and professionally, that there is first of all, there's the thought of, there's like what do I need to do to have that like mind-blowing, erotic, pleasureful, like forget your name experience. And we often think of it on that surface level. Like, what are the steps that I need to take? What are the actions? What's the sex move that's going to provide that for me?
Such a pet peeve of mine. Such a pet peeve, right? Because I see, and I know it comes from it's such a good intention place, right? Where it's like, okay, there's these strategies. I remember, I grew up reading back in the day. I mean, I'm old, so I grew up reading Cosmo. Like, I don't know if anyone here.
Yeah, no,
like
you read Cosmo and you're like, this is
yeah,
how,
like 5 ways to give the right blowjob,
right.
whatever. And it's like, okay, fine. So you can follow all those steps. And you can do it in a very mental way. And sure, it's sort of like, okay, here's an example I'm going to give. I teach pole dancing, okay, on the side, sort of enmeshed in my work. But so I've been teaching pole dancing for quite a while. And there's the type of pole dancer that you see that is like pole champion, does the most amazing tricks. You're like, wow, what is even going on? But like, you don't feel her feeling herself.
Right.
She's just like mechanical doing the thing.
Yes.
Right. And then,
right?
yeah. And then I teach also a very sensual movement pole class where people don't often do a lot of like upside down crazy tricks or anything, but they are mesmerizing. You're like, I cannot take my eyes off of you. Often we cry watching them because it's so tender and so beautiful. And to me, it's exactly the same thing. You could be going down on your partner and you could be doing all the things and you could be like the acrobat, right? But if you're not feeling them, if you're not attuned to your own body, which then attunes you to their body, it's all going to not be helpful. Okay. Or it's just going to be like surface level bullshit.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's, totally.
Yeah. And so I think that it's really important that we understand that so much of this is about attunement and energetics and less about the strategy piece of things.
Oh, brilliant. I want post that everywhere. Put it, make it a sticker, put it on a license plate. It's just, really, really like, that is also one of my biggest pet peeves as well. It's like, just tell me what to do. And it's like, that's not how it works. Right?
Yeah. And the same thing with like the sexuality being very performative and presentational, the idea that we have to show up looking a certain way or dancing a certain way or moving a certain way. And it's like, all of that needs to go. Toss it all, everything you thought you knew about sex, drop it and come back to what feels true in this moment. And if you can give yourself permission to drop in. And that's why I love working with people solo, because they go into a solo practice in movement, on the dance floor, on their mat, on a chair, wherever they are, right? Where they drop in so deeply into their bodies, and they learn to do that over and over again, that by the time you bring in another person into the equation, where all our stuff comes up, all our traumas, all our judgments, all our inner critic stuff, right? Like they have such a deep solo practice that they can come, and it'll be a little bit harder initially, but they're attuned, they have the tools of breath and movement and stretching and slowing down to actually drop them in, to have the experience of, can we just allow what's true to come into the space, instead of us reaching for something, and instead of us trying to manage the way that tonight's intimacy session is going to go, and it's just like, let's see what unfolds, and let's drop all the pressure for anyone to have to be anything other than what they are in the moment. And that is what leads to the best sex. That's what allows life force to move through you and the Eros to move through you. It's through the embodiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just think that is so well said. And are there any, this is a silly question. I was going to say, are there any other places where people get stuck? Let's change that to what are the other places that people get stuck?
I see so much self-censorship. I see these places where people start to move, and then they speed up for a moment, and I can see them go back into their head and be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna decide, my head is gonna decide what movement I go into next, because so much of Embody is intuitive movement. And so it's all about, okay, can you start to trust your body's impulse to breathe deeper, to stretch in that direction, to make a sound, to whatever is going to come up. And often people will start to drop into trust, just like in life or in relationship. You drop into trust, you're like, okay, I'm letting go. Oh, just kidding. Now my control stuff's back. Okay, now I'm going to let go. Okay. And the more we do it, the less the controlling piece comes in. And so I think what blocks us often is it's our own blind spot. We don't see the self-censorship. So I do a lot of body whispering when I work with people. I scan their bodies. I see what is the story that their body is telling us that they may not even understand, because our body keeps score. We know the body is the soma is just like, it's got like a whole novel in there. Okay. And so when you let your body do its thing, then it starts to tell you what's actually going on, how you feel, what your life story is, where you have disappointments, where you have desires and dreams. All of that shows in intuitive movement. And people will stop themselves, right? Like I'll see the sentence isn't full, or they don't put the exclamation mark at the end, or they skip a couple of words, or they skip a whole paragraph. And they often do that when they lose track of like slowing down or breathing. So then I'll feel like a clenching in the chest. They stop, their breath gets more shallow. They think they're going to go one way, and they're like, that looks silly. I'm going to do this other thing. And then they go do this other thing instead. And I'm like, oh, caught you in the moment that you just censored your own story. Right. So I think that's a really important piece that isn't really spoken to a lot.
Well, oh man, that is incredible. And it reminds me, I mentioned earlier just the piece about vulnerability, but it's that, oftentimes we think about vulnerability and like speaking and like what you're saying and communicating through words. But what you're talking about is like the vulnerability of like sharing yourself through the experience of your body.
Next level. All right.
Yes. Next level. I love
Which is why people don't want to do it, but why it's also the most fulfilling thing ever. Because once you do that, you have nothing left to lose. Only things to gain.
Oh my God. That sounds terrifying and exciting. I love it so much. All right, we are going to go on another break. And I don't know about anybody else who is listening, watching to this, but like, I'm like in this space of like, okay, like, then what? Like, now what? Like, I'm like titillated. And so like, when we get back from our break, let's talk about now what's possible. So you break away all of these barriers, you let your body tell its story. Okay, oh my God, like now what's possible? So that's what we'll talk about when we get back. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding in Love. And we are here with Nadia Munla, and we are talking about embodiment and Eros. Okay, if you are just tuning in right now, please be sure to come back when this is aired on Thursday so that you can listen to this entire conversation, because it has been beautiful, mind-blowing, expansive. I love the work that you do, Nadia. I mean, I loved it before the show, but in talking to you and having this conversation with you and going deeper, I am just here for it. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
So fun. I hope it helps people. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely think that it will. Okay, so what we were talking about before is kind of like the myths and misconceptions, and what stops people, what has them be stuck, and really having this full embodied experience. And now my question to you is like, okay, like once people get past that stuckness and they are able to really drop in, then what's possible? What do you see happen when that happens?
Yeah. So again, I'll start with sex because it tends to be what people want. But
well,
we're going to talk about
curious where this applies in other places
with
too,
leadership. Yeah, I'm going to get to leadership next.
Cool.
I want
Awesome.
to talk about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So in relationally, I'll speak to intimacy as a whole. I've found that the deeper I go into these practices, the more I am increasing my ability to open my heart and be able to hold myself in the possibility of heartbreak and the possibility of rejection and the possibility of judgment and the possibility of closure in the face of my openness. The more that I have gotten feedback from different partners, like they're like, wow, thank you so much for the clear, honest, and also emotional feedback. Right? It doesn't come from just like a mental linear place. It's coming from the heart, like, ooh, ow, that hurt. Or like, oh, actually, I'm not feeling like safe in this experience right now, or whatever it is, but it's just from this like pure, open heart place where the intention is to just to create more love in the space, more love for myself, more love for the other person by being radically honest with them. But through the heart space. I think there's radical honesty that can be a little bit, I don't want people to get confused. It could be a little just jabby. Right. And so there's been this like incredible response from all like different people I've been in any sort of intimacy with. Then we move into my business, right? And leadership as a whole. We all know that leadership is going to take a shit ton of courage. And that courage, I believe, comes from the capacity to feel and be more okay with whatever feelings come up. So I'll give you an example. Just today, I was sharing with a fellow, like a colleague, like, oh, there's this one offering that I've been promoting, and it's just like, I'm like, I don't know. It's just like not resonating with people, or I'm not sure what's happening. But I was like, you know what? Like, it is what it is, right? 5 years ago, an offering wasn't filling. I wasn't getting the response I wanted. I would be like flipping out, like, this is all like, what am I doing wrong? It's all about me, right? But it's like being with the capacity to face the fact that every so often there's going to be failures. There's going to be things that don't resonate with people. And being able to hold yourself in that is very powerful, because it stops you from giving up. It stops you from closing, from shutting down, from going into freeze for months and going, okay, I'm not going to offer anything. You know what? Let me shift my career. Let me do this. Let me do that. Right. So we have to be able to constantly be okay with the fact that some things are going to break our hearts, things that we put our entire everything into. And it's just like, people are going to be like, man, we don't really care. Right?
Totally.
It's like, so then you just keep trying, right? You're like, And that's leadership, right? Is to be able to go, I have this crazy vision and I'm not going to stop my past failures from happening, from like challenging me from moving forward with this new vision, just because I was frozen in the past. And I think that is the path of the embodied woman. Like, it's still all about that. And so that would be a big part of the piece on leadership. Another piece on leadership that I think is important is that we've been living in a world that's been leading very much from the masculine and the mental, right? And we see that, and we're looking at the world and we're like, things are not going so great. Like the earth is not doing great. Like, there's a lot of things that are not working out for us right now. Like, we have had a hard few years. Everyone's like mental health is like going down. The economy's not doing great. Like, there's just like nothing's really working out. Like, if we're not at our peak, let's just call it that. Okay, not to be like
one way to put it, for
like,
sure.
let's just, I don't want to be too dismal, but like, we're not peaking at the moment as a collective. And I think that's because we've had leadership that has been a very particular way. And I want to clarify, when I say masculine, I'm not referring to male leaders specifically. Like, this could be anyone in a leadership position, but using masculine energy, which is very much about, it's very individual. It's very from point A to point B. It's sort of like an arrow. And it's not about the collective. It's not about the holistic. It's not about taking into account the environment, the community, it's not bringing in the heart and the intuition. And I think this is a piece that when we drop deeper into our bodies, we have to remember that our bodies is nature. We are nature. We have forgotten. We think we're better. Like, we think we're separate, right? We've evolved so much in our brain that we're like, oh, there's nature and there's us. You are nature. Like, we are literally an animal that just, we happen to be the supposedly, the most evolved. That in itself is questionable, but I'm not going to go down that road too far. But essentially, what I want to say about this is, when we reconnect to our bodies individually, we're reconnecting to the collective body, which is Mother Earth. The more that I see people dropping into their own bodies, the more they're paying attention to what every single action they take and how it affects the global body, the collective body, our community, our earth, the animals around us, the trees around us. And we need that leadership right now to recalibrate from going from this place of like technology, productivity, modernism, create, like just all this expansion that happened for us that was beautiful on one hand, but it really tilted us a little too far in that direction. Right. And so coming back to our bodies is coming back to nature, which allows us to make decisions in leadership positions in a very different way. And to me, that is like erotic leadership. It is dropping deeper into life force and going, what's going to serve love and life force the most, not just in my own self, but in the collective.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in what you just said. Thank you. That was very, very well rounded. But like, one of the things that you brought up, which I think is interesting, is that in paying attention to our individual bodies, then we can also drop into the collective as well. Can you say more about that? Because it sounds like a contrast, right? Like, if I'm paying attention to my own individual body, how can I be, with everyone, right?
Yeah. Well, because then you're in your animal body, and your animal body, when you look at other animals, even though we think we're more evolved, there's wisdom, there's body wisdom that we have let go of but we sort of sacrificed it for more like mental intelligence. Okay, but you look at the animals, they do some crazy shit out there. There's some amazing stuff going on. First of all, can we talk about how a spider makes a spider web? I mean, that in itself is just like mind blowing to me. Every time I see it, I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. But I'm talking about like migration patterns. I'm talking about the instinct they have to like, oh, they know so far away that something is coming to hunt them. Why do they know all these things? Because they're so dropped into their bodies, because they're not on their iPhones, right? They have no other option but to feel and sense every single experience in their bodies. They've slowed down enough to be with that, to know when to speed up. we don't have access to that so much anymore. We have it inside of us, and that's what I'm trying to bring us back to. But I think it's by dropping back into that intelligence in body wisdom that we then intuitively can go, actually, this is the next move for me individually in my business. This is the next move for this community that is like losing some of its like wildlife because there's like an ecological problem. This is the next thing that we need to do in government, right? Like these are all these different layers. When people are dropped into that animal instinctual body, they're going to know what actually is going to take us in the right direction as opposed to stray us away from what's true.
Yeah. First of all, I completely agree with you. And there is the, again, that the word that comes up is fear. There's like the fear in shifting from how we have been operating to a new way of operating. And that's what I see as like the biggest block, the biggest stop in creating that shift is that fear of like, oh, well, what will happen if we do it a different way? Because there's an uncertainty to it. Like what you're saying makes sense to me, but I also hear like the fear in that making that shift.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it was maybe Tony Robbins. I'm not sure, but like there was some big coach at some point who said, you don't make those changes until your suffering outweighs the fear. And so I think we're starting to get there as a society. Like people are not happy. The amount of people, I was just watching a documentary of how many people are on all these different meds like Xanax and I don't know what. I'm like, oh my God, are these the numbers? Are you kidding me? Everyone's on their iPhone, but totally isolated. Like things are not going well. And so I think we're hitting a tipping point that is going to have us realize that, oh, actually, there is another way and we can't keep going the way that we are. It's just, we can't.
No, I completely and 100% agree with you. Yeah. Whew. All right, we are going to go on another break really quick. And then when we get back, I know that for myself, this has just been an incredibly eye-opening conversation. And I know that some people listening and watching, that they probably feel the same way. So when we get back, we're also going to talk about how can people find you? What are you promoting? How can people work with you? Get to know you a little bit better. So when we get back, we'll share more about you. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding in Love. And unfortunately, this is our very last segment with Nadia Munla talking about embodiment and Eros. It has been an incredible conversation. Again, if you have missed any of it, please make sure that you catch us on Thursday when this episode is aired on YouTube and podcast. You can just look up, search the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Nadia Munla, or the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Embodiment and Eros, and you will find this conversation so that you can listen to it either again or listen to the full thing. So in having this conversation with you, Nadia, oh my gosh. Okay. So there's a couple things that I want to ask you just in completing the show. And then I do want to talk about how can people get a hold of you. So the first wrap up question that I have is, what does love mean to you?
Oh, love is the highest frequency that exists in the universe, not to get too meta up, but and I think that to me, love is the divine, love is God, and love is what I like see everything through as a frame. Like what is going to serve love the most.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. If people get nothing else, what is the one thing that you hope that they got out of this episode?
That your body is your biggest ally.
Ooh. Let that one sink in, that your body is your biggest ally. I hope that people got that too.
I hope so.
Yeah. What is one action that people could take?
To
To
do
just
anything?
out of this, yeah, just like just out
Oh,
of this
out of today.
episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Out of today, what's an episode? What's an episode? What's an action that people could take?
Totally. Okay. So a very, very simple practice that I always give like people just starting off on this journey is in the mornings, before you even get out of bed, you don't even need to stand for this. So there's no excuses. For 30 seconds, you just take your hands and you start at the top of your head and you just slowly glide them down, really slow, take as long as you can. And you just take that journey all the way down to as far as you can go, your tippy toes ideally, but wherever you can reach. And the idea is that along the way, you just feel all the different textures, you feel all the temperatures, you notice something that feels really yummy, you notice a place that you haven't given love to, and you just feel yourself for 30 seconds as a little wake up. We wake up, we stand out of bed, we just start with our day, and it's like, okay, but have you like checked in with the vessel that you're inhabiting all day long, every day for hopefully a long time? And I find that in and of itself just starts to increase your capacity to feel and be with your sensations.
Thank you. Yeah, it reminds me of the principle of like the 1 degree shift. Take
Mm-hmm.
1 degree shift every single day. It's just like that tiny little action. It doesn't take like massive action every day, but that like tiny little action every day makes the difference. Just
Yeah.
like after 10 days, it's been 10 degrees. Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah, beautiful. All right. What are you promoting? What are you up to? How can people connect with you? What's going on?
So first of all, the way you can connect with me, because I love connection. I'm an extrovert, and talking into the internet, into the void, is very painful for me. So come slide into my DMs if you want to. say hi in the comments. Like, I'm so down for all those things. So on Instagram, I'm just Nadia Munla, all one word. Also, my website is just nadiamunla.com if you want to check out all the different things that I'm offering. Right now, what I'm most excited about is this program that I'm starting in January. It's called the Mastery of Energetic Sex. It's an embodiment lab for 6 couples. And we go through 6 months with 6 couples where I'm really working with in these practice labs where we go in for a good 3 hours once a month. I get to work with each couple, both in a group container, but then we're doing all that stuff we talked about, where I read your body, where I notice what is coming up in the nonverbal dynamic between the couple. I work with you on shifting, like you said, that 1 degree shift that can suddenly like reignite the spark. So this is really for couples who've either been together for a really long time or are very new and are in this place of wanting to really amp up the passion, the polarity, the spark, the erotic energy, and are just feeling like the mental sort of communication space is not giving them that. They're wanting to go into the body. So I'm really, really excited about that. We have space for a couple more couples. By the way, you don't have to be a couple. You can be not partnered. And then I partner you and different practices with different people. So that's always an option. It doesn't by any means, like, this doesn't mean you have to be in a relationship of any sort. And so to get more info on that, I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes, but I'll also say it's nadiamunla.com/M like Mary, E like Echo, S like Sam. So MES. And you can get all the info on that over there. Check it out before it's too late, because like I said, only 6 couples are in that. I'm also just like always excited about more Embody classes. I'm always teaching, offering digital classes that you can buy and do on your own. So if you're someone listening and you're like, wait, okay, so where do I start with this embodiment practice? And you want to go a little bit further than the 30 seconds of like just feeling yourself. then you can grab, I have a free gift for you. It's a short Embody class. It's like a teaser version of 20 minutes. Usually our classes are 1 full hour. So that's also going to be in the show notes. I think I'm not sure exactly what the URL for that is, but you can check it out in the show notes. And that's totally free. You just put in your email and I send it to you and you can practice at home. People love it. I've had people email me and say they've had crazy transformations just from those 20 minutes. So if there's any place to start, that would be it. And then if you love it, there's a ton of full hour classes that you can just buy on my website, that in the shop. So there's, a never ending list. I love creating new playlists and new experiences for people all the time. So I would say those are a few out of many different options, but the best way to just keep up to date is follow me on Instagram. And I love writing there. I have so many things to say all the time, as you probably can tell from the show. So definitely come say hi over there.
Beautiful. Yeah, you are a wealth of information. So thank you for pouring out your love and your knowledge and your wisdom into myself and into my listeners, all the people who are watching. Thank you so much for your generosity in sharing. I so appreciate you being here. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you. It's been so fun to chat and talk about the things that matter.
This matters. No, it's really beautiful. And I think that one thing that I hope that people get from this episode as well is that, your experience ripples out to the experience of others and to the entire planet. You matter. Your experience matters. We're all a part of this together. And so I also hope that that's what people got out of this episode as well.
Yeah. I love that.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening, for watching. Remember to subscribe, turn on the notifications so you don't miss anything. We're live Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time on the Transformation Network Facebook page. And then we are aired every single Thursday on podcast and on YouTube. All of those links are also in the show notes as well. And until next time, keep loving. You have been listening to The Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Tune in live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where we shed light on relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. Learn to love yourself and create the relationships you want. Connect with me at ElizabethAnnCunningham.com. That's ElizabethAnnCunningham.com.